Good evening. The 13th Amendment and the Black Codes. Freedom denied. Hello, my name is Anthony Michael Branch. Today I will discuss how the 13th Amendment legally ended slavery, but how its punishment clause and the Black Codes kept African Americans from true freedom. The main points of our discussion this evening will center around the constitutional foundation of the 13th Amendment, the leaders and opponents involved in its passage, as well as how American policy evolved from Reconstruction through the rise of Jim Crow. The 13th Amendment was ratified on December 6 of 1865. It abolished slavery except as punishment for a crime. It passed the Senate in April of 1864 and the House of Representatives in January of 1865. Fauna would say that for the first time, the Constitution declared a fundamental human right enforceable by the national government. Blackmun would also say it was a punishment clause that allowed a new form of slavery through a penal system. Who was involved in this passage and who were the opponents? The supporters naturally was President Abraham Lincoln, Thaddeus Stevens, as well as Charles Sumner. But the opponents were the Southern Democrats and, quite frankly, the Confederate leaders. Du Bois would say this: the Negro was free from the individual master, but still a slave of society. Andrew Johnson's leniency allowed quick passage of the Black Codes. President Johnson was not in favor of civil rights for the freed slaves. Now, we come to the point where we have to talk about the evolution of the policy. The evolution of the policy of Black Codes. First of all, they were enacted in 1865 to 1866, excuse me, in Southern states to maintain white supremacy. They criminalized everyday freedoms. This was done with respect to unemployment. Travel required proof of employment, as in the assembly without permission. What was the federal response? The Freedmen's Bureau of 1865 and the Civil Rights Act of 1866. But these protections were short-lived and ended in 1877 when federal troops withdrew from the southern states. Black Codes to Jim Crow. Black Codes evolved into Jim Crow laws. The 13th Amendment's punishment clause became the basis for convict leasing, the leasing of fellow Americans for labor. Fauna would say that freedom without the means to secure it was freedom in name only. This shifted from protecting the rights to enabling segregation and exploitation of African Americans in these particular states, which also resulting in what I wanted to talk about is policing. From Black Codes to today, scholars have linked modern policing to the enforcement of Black Codes and the Jim Crow laws. Post-Civil War Black Codes relied on sheriffs, patrolmen to arrest African Americans for minor and fabricated offenses. Jim Crow was an era that police was able to enforce racial segregation and maintain racial hierarchy. Alexander would say that modern mass incarceration is a legacy of these current systems. Blackman would go on to say that the punishment clause fueled forced labor through convict leasing. This continuity was clear. Slave patrols, Black Codes policing, Jim Crow enforcement to what we know as modern disparities in policing. In conclusion, the 13th Amendment, we will all say, was a milestone, a legal milestone for African Americans. But the punishment clause and the Black Codes undermined that very freedom. Early Reconstruction efforts collapsed under 1877. In my opinion, the black codes criminalized the constitutional rights of African Americans, resulted in freedom being denied while birthing the modern policing of urban communities that we see today, which has often resulted in stopping frisk, the stopping of black and brown youth, to the shooting of unarmed black males. This is the story of America. Thank you all for listening to my discussion around the 13th Amendment. Take good care.